You're listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Heather Angel, and I've been helping people tune into what lights them up and increase their personal and professional performance for over a decade. Now I'm best known as a high-performance coach helping entrepreneurs like you cut through the noise and create a business and life on your terms. If you're ready to step out of struggle and discover how simple it can be to create a fulfilling, joyful, and successful business without all the overwhelm and long hours, you're in the right place. Welcome, my lovely, to another Focused and Fierce episode. Today I'm joined by my friend Nina Christian, and she has been in marketing for over 2 decades. And in this episode, we are going to share with you some amazing tips to help you with your content marketing, but also to better understand a strategy behind your marketing. So if you are someone who feels like you're just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall at the moment and hoping something sticks, this episode is going to help you. Also, if you feel like you're ready to take your marketing to another level, if you want to really get more strategic around your content creation so that you feel like there's always a clear message behind it, we are going to talk about all of that good stuff in this episode. We're going to cover social media trends that are happening right now. We are going to cover some of the mistakes that Nina is seeing people make all the time on social media, plus the 3 A's of content creation and Nina's signature system, which allows you to incorporate your brand, your content, your messaging with a really clear strategy behind it. So I'm super excited. So we're going to just dive straight in. Let me know what you think about the episode on Instagram. Come and send me a DM at Heather Angel Coaching, and let's dive in. Nina, welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast, my friend.
Thank you. I am so delighted to be here. Words can't even. Honestly, Heather, I am so excited.
I know it's I have been looking forward to this so much because what we're going to talk about, I mean, apart from the fact that I get to speak to one of my friends from the other side of the world, is always lovely. But what we're going to share with everyone today, oh my gosh, is so important, because I think content creation, messaging, social media, honestly, it's the biggest thing that has my clients pulling their hair out, just not knowing which direction to go into, finding it massively overwhelming, so much advice. And you are just going to make that far more easier for everybody. So before we dive into the content, please let my listeners know who you are, who you help, and how you help them.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, my name's Nina Christian, and I'm a marketer with a long history. I've got an agency that was founded in 2000. So we are officially an adult, turning 21 this year. And over that time, worked with big brands and small and not-for-profit, tech, startups, government, the whole shebang. But ironically, I do a lot less in that space these days as a marketing agency and a lot more as a marketing educator. So we still do that. It's a kind of a both and thing. And I'm also the state chair of the Australian Marketing Institute in Victoria, Australia as well. So I really moved in, and we'll cover that, I'm sure, through here, how I kind of got more into the marketing education space. But at its core, whatever expression I'm doing in the marketing, I'm a really big believer in doing marketing in a very human and sustainable way, and empowering people to do that the same as well. So whether it's my clients or my students or anyone that I'm working with, really making sure that it is sustainable, so it doesn't exhaust you, but that it also delivers ROI and ultimately has the impact for why you're even doing what you do and being in business. So that's a little bit about me. And on the personal side, I live in Melbourne, Australia. I'm a mum, and I have 5 kids at the time of this recording, between the age of 6 and 13.
Which I remember when I first met you in an Uber in California, and you said we were talking about your business. I was like, wow, it's amazing. You're like, oh yeah, and I've got 5 kids, and my jaw just fell to the floor. I was like, wow, you are a superwoman.
I am far from that, no, but it makes for some interesting stories sometimes.
It really does. It's so amazing. And how I know, we're going to talk about your the 3 key elements of sort of content and marketing. And I know that as a busy mum, a lot of that sort of almost comes through into the business, because you've got to be organized with 5 kids, an agency, and all the other 100%. Elements of your business.
100%. I've been doing, like, my first startup when so I started the agency in 2000. In 2001, I had a tech startup as well. And that was different. That was the days of the dot-com boom and the hustle. I was probably back there at the time with Gary V doing, all of that stuff in 2001, 2002, 2003, and doing stuff around the clock. And that was all pre-kids. And I remember those days, and it was pre-social media as well. So, definitely, having to work that to that machine to get the word out. And I remember it was completely different style. I couldn't do that these days with kids. It's a completely different ball game. I mean, right, things ebb and flow in a kind of a pandemic era, but by and large, I work part-time, and a normal work week for me would be like maybe 15 to 25 hours. And so my challenge, and to get there, I had to ask some pretty challenging questions of myself, and rethink the way that I approached everything, like from my agency to my own brand, and now building out what I do online. It's not a question of, well, I have to do all these things. It's what needs to be done, and how do I do it in the container of time that I have available for it. So yeah, maybe some of your listeners are women and juggling multiple interests, or dads juggling multiple interests as and competing priorities as well, or different ones. And I really just like throwing that in as a personal. I really found that as a game changer for me. We're not talking about this, I know, and you are like so the expert on this, but just to share my experience each year to work out what my priorities are at the beginning of the year. I would take a few months off everything, off business, off social media, off everything, and in that work out what are my goals and plans and priorities for the year, and then how do I need to show up, what needs to happen for this to be a reality. And just by asking those questions and then leaning into the answers and then aligning my actions in that direction, it's enabled me to create a future, a work style, a business in a completely different way that I would have imagined several years ago.
Yeah. And everything you just said in that last sort of bit was just so on point, because I think leaning into what actually works is so important, because I think when we come from that hustle and bustle in the corporate world as well, we almost have it ingrained to us that if you're not working, anywhere between 40 and 70 hours a week, then you're not working hard enough. And it gives us an uneasy sense when we're like, oh, I'm working 20, because I work about 20 hours a week as well. And you're like, I'm profitable, I've got money coming in, but I'm not working 70 hours a week. And it took me the longest time to go, okay, that's okay, because that's what I've created. It's definitely going against the grain, and I think there's a big shift. I think we've seen over the last few years of people realizing that you don't need to hustle for 70 hours. If you're 25 and you're listening to this and you're like, but I want to, go for it. You'll get exhausted, but go for it.
Exactly. But go cut your teeth and then realize there's another way.
Yeah, exactly. So let's dive straight into. In fact, do you know what? I was going to say, let's dive into your incredible 3 key elements that you want to share, but let's start with the mistakes that you see people make, because I think that's going to really help people maybe understand what we're going to go into here, because everyone is telling you how to do your content, how to post on social media. You got some people saying you got to post 4 times a day. You got other people saying, twice a week is fine. There's so much contrasting information out there. So what mistakes do you see entrepreneurs making at the moment?
Yeah. So could I actually rewind, like even go to a question before that and even speak really briefly to why is content even important? And then in that context, talk about the mistakes, because something that I do hear quite often when I talk about content and you talk about content, and different people have different interpretations of what content is. And for some people it's Instagram, for some people it's a blog, for some people it's their website or whatever it is. So effectively, content is anything that you're putting out in any form that's not specifically sales oriented. So it can be, audio, video, written, visual, artistic, all of that can be content. Now, the reason why content has elevated in importance in the last few years is it's always been around, but it hasn't been the front and center of marketing until probably the last, maybe 5 to 7-ish years. I know it was kind of around the time of shortly after social media became a thing, that content came into a life of its own, because before that it was very much about the product, and the if you're a marketer, the 4 Ps, your product, price, positioning, promotion, place, all of that. But then with social media and then digitization and so many people going online, people then became like so fatigued with all of these messages that it started to get really, really hard to cut through. And so as a result, people started to switch off and no longer really want to be sold to, but they are open to being helped. They are open to having a conversation. They're open to being heard. They're open to being informed. They're open to having a perspective shifted. And that's where content comes into play. And it's really, really pivotal now, because it's part of getting to know, for a prospective customer, getting to know you. It's part of building authority. It's part of making yourself approachable, which is another thing we'll talk about down the track. And so, when companies and people are just putting out stuff without caring what the message is, they risk falling into an exhaustive trap of spinning their wheels of just putting stuff out. So speaking to the mistakes. Whereas one of the things that's really important right from the get-go, and this is probably the biggest thing that I see, is that people approach content creation without a clear strategy behind it. So why are they even doing it? What is going to be the end goal of that? So that would be the number one big mistake. And thinking and not taking that to the point where it aligns with the business goals. So getting 10,000 followers on Instagram, it's not really a business goal. There's plenty of people, as we know, that with oodles of followers, that don't have a sustainable business through it. So it's really, conversely, there are people with really small amount of followers that have a great business because they have great engagement. So it's not about the platform. It's not about the numbers. It's about what purpose does that content serve in taking the people that you would like to most do business with on a journey. So where does content come into play, and what platforms are they on? And we'll talk a bit about that, because I've got some really interesting thoughts around that and how it's shifting in 2021 versus the last few years. But having a strategy with your content and that aligns with your business goals. So your business goals, I'll give you some examples, because it just can sound a bit nebulous if you just throw that stuff out. Oh, be strategic, be strategic. Yeah. Like really, it's like, where does your business need to see an increase in order is it to become more profitable? Is because you want to build a brand because you're wanting someone to buy your company? Is it because you're wanting to retain your customers? Is it because you're getting a lot of people in the door as leads but you're not converting them into customers? Are they leaving too quickly? Like whatever the goal is, and you want to increase the lifetime value of those customers, whatever the goal is, your content can support that business strategy. So for many businesses and for many people listening here, it's probably going to especially be at that front end, which is, increasing leads, having a greater pool of people to be able to ultimately have in your audience and potentially have as business, people that you do business with, and then to be able to have the mechanisms to convert those into customers. So that's where, if that's what your content is, then that's where you want to be focusing and making sure that each piece of content has a strategic and considered role to play in that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to all be conversion content. In fact, it shouldn't be. Probably 5, maximum 10% should be specifically about your products and services and you. The vast majority will be about different things. However, it will be about things that tie in or that people need to know, or we'll touch on some of the other things around connection and affinity building and trust and credibility and authority that play into that overarching scheme. And also, having a plan for after people do consume your content, what is a good next step for them? What action do you want them to take? And again, it won't be buy my stuff, but what do you want the outcome of that content to be? So that is the first big mistake that I see all the time, which is people just thinking they have to put stuff out for the sake of it without each piece of content being linked to a clear strategy. And there's lots of other mistakes. I'll just give you one more that happens really, really commonly, unfortunately, and that is people aren't consistent with their content. They'll start because they're motivated, and they won't follow through, and as a result it's very hazy and ad hoc and sporadic, and that actually is not great for your brand. If you are posting 72 times in the first 2 weeks because you're motivated and you're posting videos and blog posts and social media posts and you're just everywhere, and then you're missing in action for 6 months, that actually speaks louder about your brand and you as a business owner than if you were to just simply show up and post once a week consistently on a good topic for 6 months. You'd have better return on that, because people's cumulative memory over that time, you'll register way more for the consistency and just for the continually showing up. They will remember 12 months. They won't remember you only showed up like once a week or once a fortnight, but they'll remember 12 months they've seen you consistently. This is all subconscious stuff, as opposed to this flurry of activity where they see you everywhere and then you drop off. So that's just two of the big mistakes. And, as we continue to talk along some of the things, I'll certainly weave in a few kind of do's and don'ts along the way as well.
Yeah, I mean, just those two, I was just nodding away because I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true, because the consistency as well. And I think it blends into people thinking, well, I'm being consistent, I'm putting out a post every day, but there's no strategy behind it. They're just kind of going, oh, what can I put out? What can I put out? And then, they come to me, they're like, I've been doing this for 6 months and nothing's happening. It's like, well, that'll be why. So yeah, that's so powerful. I think the strategy is really key. So how do you help, because I know you've got this amazing framework that you use with your clients. How do you help your clients with their marketing, sort of starting with the sort of 3 key areas that you work with?
Yes. Okay. That's a really good question. And it came about because of a lot of the things that I was seeing people missing in the marketplace. And so my marketing and brand strategist was, marketing and branding, whether it's for a big multinational or for a small business or a startup or a personal brand, the principles of marketing are the same. And so a lot of people were going straight to producing content, but missing a lot of the brand foundationals, which was around really getting clear on your brand identity. And that's really important, because if you're putting the energy into content creation, you want to make sure that you're memorable and that you are consistent, that you have an identity that stands out, not just because of looks or colors or because you got a, fancy, consistent color hairdo. I mean, that's kind of nice and part, can be part of it. But it's more about than colors and logos. It's really about the emotions that you spark in people whenever they have any interaction with your brand. How does that name, that feeling, that encounter make them feel? And so starting right back at that and reverse engineering, well, how do you as a brand want to make them feel? So this is how are you going to show up? And that for me is getting really, really clear on your values and what you stand for, and then expressing that through an identity. And then you actually can work through things like, your messaging and your content and things like that. And it starts to take on an alignment and a potency and a connection factor that's far greater than if you were to try and just start with the message, if that makes sense. So brand is a really, really important part. And for me, it comes back to what I said at the beginning. I mean, we are people marketing to people, and it's about the human factor. I want to connect with you as a person. I want to connect with people. If I'm doing it on behalf of a brand, I want those people to feel an affinity with that brand. And coming into a post-pandemic era, the role of the brand has taken on a whole new importance and life. I mean, it's always been important, but these days, research is that the data is there that people are making buying decisions based on how they feel about a brand and how much they trust a brand. And that is coming through, from business through to commoditizing down through to small businesses. Now people want to know who's behind the brand, what do they stand for, what do they believe in, what are they against. This all comes into the whole branding piece, and it's really important to have that clarity. And in many ways, entrepreneurs and younger emerging brands are actually better positioned to capitalize on this than a lot of the big legacy brands that struggle with it. Because they have, their set ways of doing things, and it's harder to move a big ship. And there's a lot more, cogs in the wheel, a lot less more agility. And they are grappling with that. How do we, as a big brand, show up and be more human? It's something that I'm speaking a lot at in corporate environments with big brands. And the advantage that the small business and the entrepreneur has is they can show up and be human in their brand. And so having that brand foundation is just so important. And then on that, you're building the content and having that high caliber content. And so for me, the number one type of content that I see that consistently delivers from a business perspective is hands down thought leadership content. And if listeners are thinking, they go, oh, but I'm not, Simon Sinek or Arianna Huffington or Brené Brown, I'm not a thought leader. Oh, but you are. This is a thing, is that in you, to all the listeners there, is a wealth of information and a treasure trove of truth and knowledge that you just need to extract and know how to put that into words or video or audio or however it is, and communicate that. And that is going to be what gets people's attention and what sets your brand apart when it's done in conjunction with the other things that we've just been talking about. So those two are a really powerful 1-2 punch in terms of what you need to have a brand that stands out and gets attention. And this is what we're talking about here, is completely platform agnostic. I don't care if you're on Instagram or YouTube or Clubhouse or LinkedIn, or you're on Facebook or Google or podcast. These principles are the same for every platform that you're on. And so having that perspective when you produce content, thought leadership basically is, if you think about the true definition of the word, you're leading with your thoughts. And what does a leader have? A leader has followers. So people are following your thoughts because you have something of value to share.
And would you mind if because what I find is really, really interesting about what you're saying is, something that popped into my brain is that I do have some incredible clients who don't want to be personal brands. They very much think personal brands, Instagram influencers, needing to be very much the face on Instagram the entire time. That's sort of where their mind goes. But what I think is really interesting is what you're saying about being the human behind the brand. And how are you helping, because I know you help all kinds of different sizes of companies, how are you helping them be human, really be them? I was about to use that word that drives me crazy, authentic. I feel like that needs to be washed out of the world. But yeah. How can you help people listening here who are like, I want to be that thought leader, but I don't want to create a personal brand. I want to create a legacy business maybe.
So, all right. First thing, I have fairly strong thoughts on that.
Which is why I love having you on the show, because I'm like, give them to me.
Yes. So if you want to create a legacy brand, and you can build a brand irrespective of your person. I've done that. When I built that first startup back in 2001. I sold that company in 2008. It was an internationally known company featured in major worldwide publications, TV, radio, magazine, etc. I was so scared of being mentioned anywhere. I would have journalists contacting me, and I remember making it a condition of an interview that they wouldn't name me. And once a journalist really hit me up on it and said, but we need to cite the source. We need to publish your name. So finally I agreed, all right, you can publish my name, but not a photo or anything like that. I was so conscious about wanting to build the brand. So I get that. And so for many years, I was also very happy to hide behind my agency brand. I was happy, to hide behind marketing clients' brands. But when I realized that even for my agency, when I went through a rebrand in 2017, I realized that for my agency to have the impact that I desired it to have, it needed to have more of this human factor, and it needed to have more of me. And I went through a really, really, really deep value, going back to the basics of what do I stand for? Why am I even in business? What do I want this thing to represent? What kind of people do I want it to attract? And, I know it sounds kind of a bit like, deep or woo or whatever, but what impact do I want to have in the world? And that was through an agency. And that led me on a path that has kind of taken me to where I am today, where I would put myself in the category of being first purpose driven, if that makes sense. And then aligning the rest around that, and going on that journey of finding out, where does the purpose fit? And then putting the other bits around that, what you're good at, what you like, what's profitable, what's in demand, etc., and finding the sweet spot where they all intersect. So to your question, if someone today were to say, I just want to build a brand, I would say you're in for a really, really hard time. It's like pushing, swimming through toffee. It's just going to be hard because, as I said before, big brands are trying to be more human. Small brands are realizing that when people go to the About page on a website, they don't want to know what year it was founded and how many customers they've served over the years and how many different headquarters they've had and how many different divisions they have and staff and all of the different iterations. They want to know who's it founded by, what do they stand for, why are they in business, what makes me want to do business with this firm. What kind of people work there? What's my experience going to be like? And that's really hard. Like, you're actually making life a lot harder for yourself if you just want to build the brand without the person. So, look at Elon Musk and Tesla. I mean, just as an example, it's a really big brand, Tesla, but most people buy into the brand because of the person. Or Richard Branson, Virgin is a very, very big brand and has been sold, different aspects of that, but people buy into the person. So I just say it can be done, but in today's day and age, you're really making life so much more difficult for yourself if you're not willing to do it. And, there's different ways you can do it. It doesn't mean you have to show up and, cry on camera and air your dirty laundry and, come up with, mascara, teared face and all of that. That it's going to be different for everybody. You can strategically, craft content that's still authentic and that's still valuable. You can have your team do that as well. It doesn't even have to be you as a founder. If you're not even comfortable on camera, there's lots of ways around that. You can get somebody to interview you and just write that up. That's something that we do with clients quite a lot, is that we'll just, get a journalist or a great writer in and interview them, extract a lot of the thought leadership and then help them package it. So it makes it really easy and just a very easy thing for them and not overwhelming.
And it's that idea. That's a great idea. Such a great idea to have someone interview you.
Yeah. And then that way, and that's kind of ironically how I started, got started in this whole area that I'm in now, which is really equipping people to become thought leaders. People who probably, a lot of them, when they meet me, they don't even know what the term is, thought leadership, or they don't think of themselves as thought leaders. But when I explain it, and when I explain that people are going to want to do business with you because they're interested in what you have to say, they care about what you have to say, they resonate with what you say, and what you are communicating is helping them. It's somehow making their life better or their business better. And that's an amazing thing. And if you can do that and harness that in a strategic way, which, coming back to the top of the show, aligns with your business goals. I mean, there is 0 point going in and talking about something that it might be a passion or a hobby if there is no way to commercialize that. I mean, that's great if you're purely doing it for impact, but don't, talk about, your hobbies and your knitting and your tapestry and all of that and expect to be, selling your digital marketing services off that straight away. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There's a part in it. There's a part of it where you can definitely weave that in for storytelling. You can weave that in for examples. You can weave that in for affinity building. People want to know about you, but you will want to demonstrate some thought leadership in an area that you aligns with your business goals, obviously. Mm-hmm. And just one thing that I'll throw in there about thought leadership is it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking, earth-shattering. It doesn't have to be some big, 62 paper, white paper expository. Yeah. It doesn't. Statistics show right now that people want short, snackable. In fact, a study last year done, the biggest one ever by Edelman PR around what kind of thought leadership is performing best is that snackable content that can be consumed in a couple of minutes consistently does better. Yeah. And I think in the context of social media, we see this all the time, the trend towards shorter and shorter and shorter. If you can give somebody a perspective shift, a new way of looking at the world or a particular topic as it relates to your business, if you can get them to take a baby step closer to their goal, that is classed as thought leadership because you are actually helping them by sharing your thoughts. And so when you make it that achievable and that attainable, people's eyes pop open and they go, oh, wow, I can actually do that. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that, that really lights me up is working with a lot of really unlikely people who didn't see themselves as thought leaders, but absolutely are in extracting and unpacking that and then getting that out into the world.
Yeah. And I think it's really evident. I mean, what you're saying, post-pandemic world, this is really evident. The shift in the online space especially has been huge. A lot of the big boys are not going to be doing so well. And I'm seeing a lot of my clients thriving at the moment because people want that true connection. And you're absolutely right. They are thought leaders. They just didn't realize it because we've been so distracted by these big, gurus, if you like, of the industry thinking, oh, well, they know the answer. There's so much more, grassroots businesses now kind of going, oh, actually, I know this stuff. I can teach. And they have their own tribe of people. And exactly like you said at the beginning, you don't need 100,000 followers on Instagram to have a successful business. You absolutely don't. It's not about that. It is about having that real connection. And exactly like you said, realizing that you are a thought leader because your tribe are resonating with you and what you are sharing in your way of sharing it. Because don't you find that's also something people fall into the trap of like, well, other people have done this before. It's like, well, if every coach or marketer thought that, we'd never start a business because there's thousands of us.
That's right. That's right. You have to lean into what makes you, you. And I'm not going to lie and sugarcoat it. It's a process. Mm-hmm. We've all been through it. I'm not going to say that from the day you decide you want to start a business, that the next day you're going to be completely clear on all of those things. You're going to have to go through a process, but it is a beautiful process because as well as being a great marketing process, it's a wonderful process of self-discovery as well. And when you commit to go through the process and put in the work, it's evident and people can tell and people will resonate with that. And that will just make your message so much more powerful.
It so is. And I mean, I have to be mindful of the time that we don't go on a whole, because we could go on a whole other messaging tangent, because that's a beast in itself. And, you know, I really agree with everything you say. It's been a 5-year process for me of many, many iterations of finally getting to like, got it. This is my purpose. This is why I'm here. And this is why I've done all those different iterations to get to this point. And it is a process. And I'm not even naive enough to think that, you know, I could have this conversation with you in another 5 years and go, oh, it's changed again.
Well, we'll both be in a different space again then, for sure. Like the marketplace will be different.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let me give you 2 real quick value bombs as we wrap up. I hate that word, but I don't know why that slipped out, because I just dislike it. Probably because I'm trying to be quick. But I want to give your listeners 2 things that I think will really help them. And just in terms of, you know, practical, actionable, we've talked a lot about big concept and hopefully given people a perspective shift. I think that's the goal with what we're doing. Just 2 things that are going to help them. Number 1, in 2021, I'm seeing a real shift away from people who are just being on one platform going to be able to be successful only by being on that one platform. Because to your point about quote unquote authenticity, people are on multiple platforms themselves. I don't know anybody who is only on Facebook and doesn't ever go on Instagram, doesn't ever go on YouTube, and doesn't go on Google, etc. So same for LinkedIn. Just because someone's on LinkedIn doesn't mean they don't have a Facebook account and go on YouTube or, you know, listen to podcasts. So there is, with this thing of needing authenticity or genuine, people want trust, credibility. They are checking people out on multiple profiles. So having some sort of presence that's consistent across multiple platforms, it doesn't mean you have to be posting every day or every week even, but just being mindful people are checking you out all over the place, and just making sure that what people are looking at your shop front in the different places is consistent is really, really important. It's important now, especially with the advent of apps like Clubhouse as well, which are pushing people out to your different applications. You want to make sure that same messaging, same branding, same person is showing up. Number 1. Number 2, and this is the third big kind of cornerstone of my own methodology and how I teach, because it's so important. I've learned this through trial and error myself, is having the brand is great. Having the content is important too, but it's really important to have some systems and structure behind that to power that. And it doesn't have to be complex, but you have to have something, because if you're just doing it ad hoc, you can have the best branding and the best content, but if you don't have a methodology and a practice or a workflow or a system to get it out there on a consistent way, or, you know, just processes around how you do things, you're going to be stifled and hindered and not get things out. And the last thing I'll say to that is, it doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be there. And it could be something as simple as posting once a week. That's fine. But then don't just do it like for a little bit of time and then change and do something else. Layer something else on top of that, and just very, very slowly build out your processes and your layers. But they are really important, because, you know, they are going to power your content production when life happens. You know, I've just come off a 3-month, you know, kind of hiatus where I just didn't produce a lot of new content in 3 months. I just went through a lot of personal stuff. And, you know, I was really able to lean into my content, my systems, and I didn't have to worry or panic that I wasn't visible, that emails, you know, weren't communicating, that I wasn't showing up, that I wasn't on social, because I had those systems to support me. So it takes time to build, but start and build with the systems in mind is a really, really powerful approach.
And I would love to actually just talk about that a little bit, because I know systems and processes, I am obsessed with them. Like, the more systems and processes I can have in my business, the better, which is ironic, because a couple of years ago I thought that was the opposite of freedom, but actually that's what creates freedom. And what I think is really interesting what you said is, most people are so reactive when it comes to social media. They have no long-term plan. And, you know, I've said to you, I'm like, I'm loving your content, it's amazing. You're like, great, I haven't actually done nothing's been created. So what if there is something for someone listening who would just feel amazing if they could just get, a month's planned ahead, what could they do? What's something really simple that they could do? Because attached to that as well is, what are they posting? That is the question I get asked all the time. It's like, well, what do I post? What am I sharing? So what are your top tips on that?
Yeah. For someone starting out, if you're at ground zero, just wondering, I'll just give you a really simple framework to start. So 3 A's, I'm not sure if you heard them before, you might have, it's quite common, but it's a really easy place to start. One is affinity or approachability, content that is going to help people bond with you and connect with you. And it's not, necessarily posting stuff about your breakfast and all the rest. As much as possible, tie that into, your business. Like if you're just showing some stuff like behind the scenes or documenting your life or documenting your journey or something like that, telling a story, that can be really powerful. So having a mix of authority, then you want, approachability and affinity, then you want to have authority, which speaks to the credibility and trust. And that's where you are showcasing your expertise. That's where you might be talking, sharing content where other people have talked about you, or maybe some major wins. That is another key milestone. And then the third part is awareness. Now, when I say awareness, it doesn't mean you're necessarily selling stuff. It's not sales, but it's letting people know about what you do and what area you show up in. And so if you as a really, they can't transact, or they can't build a relationship with you in a business context if they don't even know what you do. And I see a lot of people, they like posting stuff, but you look from the profile, you can't really even tell, well, what do they even do? So just talking in a very natural way about your products or your services or the results or something encouraging that's happened, and that can go under the awareness thing. So really just as a very, very simple for someone who's just starting out, strip it right back to the bare basics. Just try and make sure you've got a mix of awareness content, affinity content, and approach and authority content mixed in. And look, depending on what platform you are and how much you want to show up, you might want to do one a week, or you might just want to do one post a week. If you're not doing anything, I often say just start with once a week, because 3 a week is a lot for someone who's not doing any. Once you're posting consistently for a month, then add a second one. Once you're doing that consistently for a month, then add another one, or then go and add another channel if you think that your audience are on both. And don't, by the way, just copy and paste everything. That's another thing. Just make sure your content is going to be appropriate for that channel. So it might, the crux of it will, but you just need to do a few tweaks. But yeah, so that's a really simple place to start that's not overwhelming, and that's very achievable.
Oh, it's been amazing. I'm definitely wanting people to bookmark this episode, because we've covered so much, all the way from the 3 areas, which remind us again, the 3 key areas for people.
You need to have your brand, your content, and your systems. And those 3 working in harmony will give you an awesome, powerful, successful content system that will drive your business, your visibility, your credibility. It'll build authority. It'll be like a machine that works behind the scenes, just powering your marketing.
And if, honestly, everyone listening, if you can look at those 3 areas and then just simply use those 3 A's when it comes to creating your content, that's going to be game changing in itself. It's actually very simple. You can go into the depths of branding, you can go into the depths of all the different types of content, and you can go into the depths of having far more complex systems. Nina can help with that, but just looking at that framework, the 3 areas and the 3 A's, I just feel like that all of a sudden for me, I'm just like, oh my God, that's just going to, so many of my clients are going to listen to this, go, oh yeah, I can do that. That is actually possible, rather than what we see so often is exactly what you said, the fits and starts, like loads of content, then nothing, because they're exhausted or burnt out, or they don't know what to talk about. So useful. Amazing.
Yes, so good. Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
I'm going to have to get you back another time for a discussion, probably around messaging as well. But before we finish up, just very, very quickly, because we've got a couple more minutes, I just want to make sure we cover as much as we can. Are there any social media trends that you're seeing at the moment? Because you've spoken about, obviously, we want more authenticity and approachability. Are there any other social media trends that you're seeing at the moment that people can be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. So one I also touched on around succinct information, compactness of information, and high value. There's a trend to want to deliver as much value in as short a time as possible. Now, the medium, you're going to have to work out what suits you. Not, that can be through a post. It can be through a carousel post, which is doing really well at the moment. People like the interaction of like scrolling past, and they also like videos as well, and shorter, like, so a year or maybe 2 years, 18 months ago to 2 years ago, kind of 5 to 10 minute videos were really doing well on social media. But now anything more than about 2 minutes is tough, like it needs to be less than a minute, and you need to be able to get your point across really, really quickly. And then people who like you, different story. They'll go and watch your stuff and they'll listen to you for 20 or 30 minutes. But on social media, it really needs to be short, sharp, and succinct and visual. So that would be my number one tip at the moment. Try and give as much value as you can in as shorter time period as possible. And obviously pick what works for you. Don't go and dance on reels just because you saw some other people doing that. Pointing at words. No judgment. I love watching them, but it's not me.
Oh my God. I have not done a reel out of pure protest because I had such a hissy fit on Instagram. I was like, why are all these incredible women that I highly respect all of a sudden dancing around like lunatics pointing at words? I was like, what happened? It's like everyone lost their mind. Reels came out and everyone went, I've got to point at words and I've got to awkwardly dance. I'm like, oh Jesus. Heaven help us all. I was like, I am not doing that. I don't care.
Yeah. I know. Get it.
Oh, it was so funny. All the joys. But I do see that, that trend is starting to ease away and people are using reels slightly differently. But yeah, it was when it launched, it was just, gosh, a lot of people pointing at words. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm not down with this. I'm done. It's amazing. So how can people find you, contact you, and learn about working with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is ninachristian.com, really easy to remember. I'm on most of the social platforms as at Nina Christian, or except for Instagram, it's at Nina Christian HQ. And if you would like basically an overview of that process that I took you through around becoming a thought leader, I have a roadmap workbook, playbook kind of interactive thing that you can grab at ninachristian.com/roadmap.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be sharing that with all of my clients. It will be in the show notes for sure, because I think this is definitely an episode, like I said, bookmark it, listen to it back, get that roadmap in front of you, because the clarity that's going to come when you have those 3 elements and just simply use those 3 aids, it's going to be game changing. Thank you so much. You have been a star, as I knew you would be.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Can't wait to do it again sometime.
Thank you so much, my lovely. Thank you for listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation or have a question that you would like answered in an upcoming episode, head over to Instagram and connect with me at Heather Angel Coaching. If you enjoy this podcast, please share your thoughts in a review on iTunes. I truly value your feedback and I take the time to read every single review. Have a beautiful week and I'll see you in the next episode.